Hello and welcome to IB World History online. I'm going to talk to you today a bit about your um, internal investigation, your historical investigation that some of you have done already. And so, since that is going to be the only thing that IB will grade this year, then it is going to be that assignment that will be completely contingent upon whether or not you get the diploma, which I think could be good news for many of you. So the assignment that I have for you today is intended for you to go ahead and look at an IB assessment, something that another student did, and that has been graded. It got roughly more than half. It actually got 16 marks. And so now I'm going to go through and tell you what I expect from you for this assignment. The student's sample internal assessment, and I have a couple of questions for you to look at. But the first thing that I want to do is point out some of the things about this paper. This is a largely successful paper. I'll just tell you right now, it gets 16 out of 25, which is well more than half. So the first thing that it begins with is you have a question for the investigation. And in addition to that, they have also noted to their reader, this is the limit of my scope right here. And you usually want to do something that is less than 10 years. You don't have to do this, but I do recommend it. It does add a bit more to your paper and shows a bit more effort on your behalf. A picture to start off your paper, a relevant picture. And then finally, you have your table of contents. You have to have 3 sections. Section 1, identification and evaluation of sources. That is where you look at 2 of your sources and evaluate them as far as OPVCL is concerned. One thing that many of you are not doing in your evaluation of sources is talking about how these sources have helped you in your investigation as well. This is the investigation part, and that, as you can see, it is the longest part of the paper. And then finally, you have the reflection. This is where you personally talk about what you went through and what you learned about what it's like to be a historian. And if that's not in your paper, if you do not have these 3 elements in your paper, then you need to do a significant revision. And then finally, you have your bibliography, which is very necessary. As we go through this paper, of course, each section is delineated very clearly. Some of you are not doing that. You're just kind of just starting off with your paper. You want to be very clear as to where you are going and the purpose of each section of your paper. As we get to the investigation itself, there is something that I do want to point out to you about this paper. And that is the fact that these paragraphs are not long. They're and so many of you have these huge long paragraphs that kind of are basically about 3 or 4 paragraphs put together. And so when you do revise your paper, figure out where you can shorten your paragraphs. A long paragraph does not mean that you have a great paper. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Finally, we get to the reflection, and once again, it is delineated very clearly, and I want you to read this reflection. It's actually a pretty good reflection. And then finally, it ends with the bibliography. If you do not have these 4 elements of your paper, you need to make sure that you get them very, very soon. History, internal investigation, sample, student evaluation. So the first thing that you're going to do is look at whether or not there has been an appropriate investigation. So here is the criteria for an appropriate investigation. and then you of course want to explain. So these questions are super easy, and the only purpose that I have in them is to get you to go back to the paper and figure out where this student actually does these things. The answer to every single one of these questions is basically yes. And what I need you to do is figure out how they got to that yes. And then finally, then there is your student self-reflection, which basically means after you've read this paper, what can you do to make your paper better? So once again, good luck on this. You will be getting different assignments, but this should be your main focus as far as history is concerned. Thank you.